Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us. My name is Ann Gardner, and I'm the Director of Sales at Credo Reference. Welcome, and thank you for joining us today for our second presentation within our Credo in Action webinar series. Before we begin, there are a few housekeeping items I'd like to go through. If you can hear me okay, please use the raise hand option located on your control panel. Okay, terrific. It looks like we're all set. There will be a recording of today's webinar shared via email within 24 hours. At the conclusion of today's session, there will be a short survey that pops up on your screen. If you do not have time to complete it now, the survey will also be shared with you in your follow-up email. During the webinar, we will be conducting a few polls. When prompted, please choose the best answer to the question you will see on your screen. Lastly, if you have a question during the webinar, please use the questions portion of your control panel to submit them, and we will answer all of the questions we have time for at the end of the presentation. Okay, let's get started. Again, thank you for joining us today for Pre-Search to Research, Credo as Academic Google. In today's session, you'll hear from a team of librarians from Howard University who have come up with interesting ways to wean students off of the typical open web searching they're accustomed to and encourage them to use Credo as their academic Google. You are sure to walk away today with some ideas you could implement at your library. I would now like to introduce our speakers from Howard. Niketha McKenzie, she's a first-year experienced librarian. Kimberly Prosper, who is the reference librarian, and Adia Coleman, the patent and trademark librarian. So I'm going to turn it over to Howard University's elite librarians, and we'll get started.
Hello, everyone. My name is Niketha McKenzie, and again, I am the first-year experienced librarian here at Howard University.
Hi, everyone. I'm Adia Coleman, patent and trademark librarian.
Hi, everyone. I'm Kimberly Prosper, the reference librarian.
Okay, in today's webinar, we're going to talk about how to promote one-shot instruction as a two-part workshop. We're going to talk about how to incorporate student comparability and convenience as a tool for student engagement and research buy-in. And lastly, we want to touch on how to develop a shared platform of accountability for librarians and faculty to engage, to look at student retention and scholarship. Our presentation is divided into 3 phases. So first phase, we're going to talk about our pre-search instruction workshop. Our second phase, we're going to talk about the research instruction. And thirdly, we're going to talk about how we have used Credo to transform our first-year experience instruction.
Okay, so we're going to start with I think we're going to start with a poll. If we could bring the poll up, that would be great. Terrific. Thank you. So the first poll is, do you have mandatory library orientation classes? So please choose one of the yes, we do, no, they're not mandatory, or no, we don't have library orientation classes at all. So I'll give you all a minute to cast your vote. Okay, so the results are 64% have classes that are not mandatory, so that was by far and away the largest of the 3. Okay, terrific. So we go back to the presentation.
Okay, thank you for participating in that poll. We were interested in these results because here at Howard University Libraries, we do not have a mandatory class, and we really had to find a way to think about how we can engage our students as well as faculty in considering the importance of information literacy. So when we started to initially think about this work, one of the studies that we consulted was the Project Information Literacy Study. And this study just really spoke to the behaviors that we see here on our college campus among our freshman students. So understanding that students are overwhelmed when they are transitioning from a K-12 to a academic platform, understanding that there are difficulties that are associated with them being able to conduct research, oftentimes in academic platforms outside of Google, and knowing that freshmen oftentimes wrote papers, I like to call them building papers sometimes, from their Google sources, and having a more mandatory rubric to say that you need things that are scholarly, and what does that mean, and what does that look like in this space. So this study really helped us to think about the work that we needed to do here in the library in terms of transforming our student instruction. So first things we had to consider was how we were situated. So what was some of the problems? Of course, as many of us share, limited instructional librarians, and also the point of engagement. So in rethinking ways to improve our instruction, we wanted to make sure that we had platforms that had a built-in assessment component. We wanted to make sure that we had incorporated student voice. We wanted to extend the olive branch to our faculty members. We wanted them to participate with us and join into this partnership. And after researching and considering a number of venues, Credo became the spotlight for transforming or solution to this problem. We view Credo as a one-stop shop for information literacy instruction, primarily because it's really easy to embed into our content management system, Blackboard, and it's also a great reinforcement platform when we are trying to encourage students to revisit maybe a skill that we introduced through a workshop. Okay, so considering all of that work, we started to unpack the resources that we subscribe to from Credo to talk about how to make our workshops, at the minimum, more engaging and student friendly. So two of the platforms that we use in Credo, we subscribe to the information literacy course modules, as well as the tutorials. So our first iteration of our workshop, we use the Credo Information Literacy Putting Your Skills to Use platform. And unfortunately, we're not able to demo this for you, but it is an interactive presentation that allows students to walk through the research process as you are modeling it. And it's really nice because students are able to capture a transcript of information and resources that they gather as they're going through the workshop, and they can email this transcript to themselves at the end. And they can continue to build on this research even beyond the workshop itself. So that was a really big selling point when we used it with our professors and students. Second version of our instruction platform that we worked on was the hybrid model. Because we do subscribe to a number of Credo's library tutorials, we're able to use more of the library instruction method, and we're able to push out certain suites or tutorials to professors in lieu before they come to the actual library workshop. And this really allows us time to focus on some of those issues and questions and problem areas that students are having when it may be a time issue. So this just saves us a little bit of time for instruction. And our third version, which is the one that we are most excited about and we're receiving a lot of positive feedback on, is our pre-search to research workshop. And the highlight of this workshop is that we built it around things that matter to students and issues that matter to professors. So professors began to talk about students struggling with keywords and not really finding articles that were relevant for their research. And students were honest about how they felt about this process. You know, that it was overwhelming, that it was hard to navigate or use library resources. So the Pre-Search to Research workshop is the idea that we are positioning students for research. So what does this look like at Howard University in our instruction? So what we tried to do is use a three-step process, the fourth being just the positioning. In this process, we try to address those issues that we identify in our initial assessment of our instruction. So number one, it was redefining research for our students. And in each of these processes, we use a Credo tool to kind of highlight and to prepare students for that next step. So the first stage of this is processing, highlighting for students through a Credo reference video, just the stages. So you need to have an understanding of the assignment. You need to understand what your end product should be. You need to understand your references and things of this nature. So we are just highlighting that research is a process in and of itself. And we are also taking into account that they are transitioning from one platform of research to an academic platform. And those platforms are very different in nature. So this workshop encompasses that as well. So the next stage is preparing to unpack your topic. Students and professors gave a lot of feedback with just the difficulty centered around conducting research using library databases. And sometimes even, you know, on Google, if you're not using keywords that help you identify these really great articles, there was just some difficulty around this work. So the idea of unpacking is just allowing students to think about what they're thinking about. It's a tool that we use to help them visually record what's going on in their minds, because sometimes that's all they come with, a topic. And so we have to help them shape and frame this topic. And then the third phase of our pre-search workshop is the practice and play. Faculty, we receive really encouraging feedback from faculty when we allow student time built into our workshops for students to actually practice some of the skills that we are going over, and then they're having success finding information. In this stage, we also do what we call our mirror to mirror exercise. And this is where we have them conduct a search in Google, which is their natural starting place for research. And we move them over to a Credo platform. Credo becomes our gateway to building progression in scholarship. So we acknowledge that maybe students are not coming with a very high level, in some cases, scholarship, and may not be as familiar with these databases, but it's a safe place that mirrors a lot of the comfortabilities offered in Google, but it lives on an academic platform. So it's the best of both worlds for us, and it serves as our bridge as we prepare them to move from a pre-search situation to conducting research using the resources that we have here at Howard University. And we hope by going through this process that we have now positioned students to do the research that awaits them. Okay, and with that, we are going to pass it to my colleague, Adia Coleman.
Okay, hi everyone.
Are you
I
there?
believe there's a poll. Yes.
Okay.
Is there a second poll?
There is. The next poll is, what strategies have you employed to engage students in starting their research? And the choices are handouts, open discussion, polling software, and others. The poll is still open. Okay. So the results are 46% for handouts, 36% for open discussion, 6% for polling software, and 12% for other.
Okay. Okay. So the reason why we asked that question is because we understand that the biggest thing that we can do as librarians who aren't in the classroom day in and day out is really engage our students. And so we feel that any activities that you can do to engage the students is going to be the best thing to kind of reach their little hearts and introduce yourself as the fun supplement to this huge space that they're entering. And so my colleague Niketha talked about positioning. In the pre-search workshop, we understand that the effect that Credo has on them is getting them to be not only passing that baton, but going over a bridge to make that great transition into the college level research that they're going to have to do coming from that K-12 model. Okay, so this is again our two-part portion of our pre-search to research workshop. And so in the research portion, we're going over the 4 R's that we have customized here at Howard for research using Credo reference. So the first one is our realization. We want to make sure that the students are made aware of all the resources that they have, and we'll go into that more in depth. We also want to give them new direction. So we're kind of redirecting them once they've been given that roadmap in the pre-search workshop. We're also redirecting them to a new space. We're then refining their research behaviors. Here we have an example of Amazon because we are understanding that students have already been doing this refining process. They just didn't know that that's what they were doing. And so we're kind of giving them a glimpse into that comfort level that they can experience on an academic platform. And then we're making sure that they reflect on this whole experience and applying these new concepts that they just learned. Okay, so we feel that it's important for students to be made aware of all the resources that they have access to before they can begin to conduct the actual research. And so what you're seeing here is what we call here at Howard the discovery chart. It's a realization tool, if you will. And so this is just one of our many iterations that we have at our public desks as well as online. And it's showing that there are going to be different resources that you can access based on a color-coded system that takes them from the green immediate access that they can get online all the way to this red bubble that shows, you know, the interlibrary loan realm or the 10-day realm or the realm that is going to take a lot more time. And so this one iteration is really speaking to, of course, the biggest component, which is awareness. It's ensuring that the students know everything that Howard University has what we have in our consortium and what they have access to just being in the metropolitan area of Washington, D.C. There are resources everywhere that they can gain access to for their research. Then we focus on resource matching. And so based on the topic that they bring to us in our pre-search to research instruction, we are matching certain resources. We understand that they may not have concepts of other materials. They've only been using books probably at this point, maybe a couple of articles, but there's so many other resources that they can use. And so we're just trying to match what they have access to with what they would need in their research. And that speaks to the discovery expansion. So if a student is coming to us only thinking, okay, I'm in a library setting, I'm only going to get books. Now, with this realization tool or this discovery chart, we're showing them that no, there's more that you can get. And so we are kind of expounding and expanding their minds for the discovery universe. That also speaks to the information needs. So now their needs are going to be different and customized based on each and every research assignment that they have. And so we're identifying what the need is first, and then we're expanding on this whole concept of, okay, it's not just in the stacks, it's not just online, it's the resources are located and can be identified everywhere. And of course, since we're dealing with a freshman or a new student population, it's important that we discuss this topic of time management. Again, we have color-coded our resources based on how much time it takes to access that particular resource. And so we are having a conversation now. We're having a discussion about time management, about making sure that you've allotted enough time for your research. You can't just do things overnight anymore. But this realization tool further answers several questions. It answers exactly what Howard University has. One of our iterations shows an exhaustive list of everything we have based on these color-coded time frames. It shows them where the resources are located, which is really important because they're in several different spaces, either on campus or in our partner institutions in our consortium. And then it's going over how to access them. All right. So Niketha talked about the process, the activities that we employ. We don't do a lot of handouts, but what we do is we get them into their comfort zone. The comfortable space for them is Google, and let's not lie to ourselves, the comfortable space for us is Google as well. But we are doing what we call a mirrored practice, and this is a mirrored activity. Here at Howard, I'm also the library liaison to the communications department, School of Communications. And so the example I have here is that we have students literally type in their topic. So communications law in Google is conducted, and communications law is then mirrored in Credo, our academic Google. And we're showing them that, yeah, you might have 17 million results in Google, but when you mirror that same search in Credo, it's redirecting them into a new space. Now you have access to e-reference books and topic pages that you wouldn't normally have in Google. And it's redirecting them also into a way of managing their research behaviors, to getting them comfortable with a new space. Okay, as I mentioned before, students have always done this refining, whether they're using Amazon website, I know I do, whether they're using AutoTrader, whether they're using Walmart. All of these websites have built-in filters. And so we're showing them that you can do your natural behavior of narrowing your search by just using what's already predefined. And Credo really does a good job of setting up natural ways to narrow your search by content type, related resources. They even have a really good toolbox. But the difference is you can do all of your filtering, but you're using Credo as a platform to actually cite. So now, while you're in Google and you're getting that background information, right? All you have is just that, just the background information. But with Credo, we're showing them that once you refine your search and once you narrow your search results, you are able to include these results in Credo in your bibliography. So it's all about knowing what to look for. Okay, and I took a quote from John Dewey, who's an education reformer, because during our reflection process, we're explaining to our students that it's not that you learn from this actual experience, or it's not that you learn from this actual workshop. It's actually reflecting on this workshop, reflecting on all of the activities, like as John Dewey said, reflecting on the experience. And so our pre-search to research workshop really is an experience. Sometimes it's a 2-day workshop, sometimes it's a 2-hour workshop, and we really are giving them a huge experience. And so we're making sure that students reflect on those keywords that they just created and developed in the brainstorming practice, using that brainstorming map. We're making sure that the students reflect on the discovery chart or the realization tool to make sure that they are aware of all the resources and the locations and the time that it's going to take to get these resources. We're also making sure that students reflect on that roadmap that they were given in the pre-search, and then making sure that they are comfortable with being redirected in the research portion of the workshop. And then we're making sure that students are comfortable with starting in Google, but not necessarily staying there. We want them to move to the academic Google or platforms like Credo.
Okay, so we have our last tool of the day. Why do you think your students aren't making the most of available databases? Because they're unaware of the available databases, they're not comfortable using academic resources, lack of faculty encouragement, lack of incentivization to use available resources, or something else? The poll is open now. Okay. So the top two, they're unaware of the available databases, or they're not comfortable using academic resources. Seems to, that's 76% of all of the results. So thank you.
Hi, everyone. My name is Kimberly Prosper. So I'm going to talk about the Credo effect. In the next phase of this webinar, I will highlight positive outcomes and feedback from students and faculty when using Credo for pre-search to research initiative. Based on our results from our poll earlier on about academic databases, we can use Credo as a starting point for having students to use the databases more often. So we're going to cover through the Credo effect, student voices, how to cultivate curiosity in research, increase comfort in academic research and independent learning, faculty buy-in and engagement, how do we go about improving research in the curriculum and aligning it to the curriculum, the library value that's added, which helps strengthen general education and student scholarship. Also, what are our next steps to expand our role as collaborative educational partners? Student voices, how do we cultivate curiosity for students in research? Curiosity guides students' success by flexing students' curiosity muscle. First, try to reframe boring situations. Students really get excited about learning about resources the library has to offer. When students are actively interested in the learning process, it takes a great deal to interrupt their train of thoughts. Reshape learning about research into an evolving concept that will be meaningful for students beyond their current assignments. Try to create resourceful and innovative ideas to developing effective library instructions. One way we managed to do this was to use current events. This was a great way to begin the initial stages in pre-search. We met students where they are. Current events are a great way to captivate students and engage students to ask purposeful questions. One great example that we did recently during a pre-search workshop was to research the psychological, mental, and science aspect behind the new toy craze fidget spinners. From here, we provided students with the opportunity to explore and experiment while using Credo based on their topic choices. Students were grouped together in a collaborative learning environment to actively explore problems and challenges to gain deeper understanding on the research topic. Lastly, in the pre-search workshop, we always support questioning to help students develop critical thinking skills and support independent learning. And on top of this slide, we also have feedback from faculty that tell us what we're doing throughout the pre-search to research workshop that they liked. Next, student voices. How do we increase comfort in academic research? One step that we learned that has been really effective was to model and release. In this way, we allowed students to learn from example. This method is framed around the process of devolving responsibility from the teacher to transition the student to be independent learners. Students were given guided instructions and demonstration on how to conduct research using Credo. The result was a student who was confident in self-directed learning. We also build in time for play and process. This is mirroring what Nikita said earlier on in the play and process portion of the pre-search. So students were given time to put into play and practice what they learned. Research is a skill that gets better with accumulating experience. By providing students with the opportunity to practice and process, this would deepen their understanding of the research process to application. And lastly, support student thinking. This is a very critical portion. As part of the ongoing flow of instruction, supporting student critical thinking through purposeful question of learning concepts. Research improvement in the curriculum. How do we tie in with faculty and allow them to be engaged in library instruction? One way we used was using a content management system like LibGuide, which helps incorporate audiovisual and content for course guides. It also helps create awareness of the library resources. Also, faculty tend not to have an idea of how the library can be useful within the course curriculum. Professors know that the library can help, but is unaware of how this is achieved. So we need to identify the problem and highlight the library as a solution. As librarians, we can take the lead on this particular area and highlight where the library resources will be helpful during the duration of the course. Build respectful relationship. Engage and meet faculty outside the classroom and library. Attend events faculty are having in their field. Be present in conferences, meetings, and events around campus. Aligning to the curriculum, bridging the gap. Meeting ACR standards for information literacy helps bridge the gap when addressing course expectations. Creating an instructional plan, provide faculty with a snapshot of the intended workshop to give faculty a voice and encourage feedback of information to be covered during the workshop. And also this goes back to the LibGuide. Establish a dedicated website for disseminating library resources. The library added value. Based on ACR standards and feedback, we have known that with the library added in coursework, students tend to have a higher level of academic success. They're much more positive outcome for students, and students perform better in their coursework. And there's a link to higher retention and confidence in their coursework as well. The next step, where do we go from here? Develop session for professional development. Professional development is aligned with personal excellence. In an ever-changing field, lifelong learning is essential for personal and professional growth. Improve our team teaching practices. We have learned that with 2 librarians in the classroom, it helps provide students with support, and it helps increase the interaction between students and librarians. Also, the last thing we're attempting to do and increase is library resources for faculty and students. One way we're doing it is to push our discovery chart, so make sure that students and faculty are aware of the resources that the library has and outside the library as well. And last, we have our Research Bridge program, where we're working with high school students and research seminars in the freshman dormitory. Thank you, guys. Last, we have questions, comments, or remarks. Any questions, comments, or remarks?
Thank you, Niketha, Kimberly, and Adia. We will be taking questions. If you have, you can enter them in the question box on your dashboard, and then submit them. And if you haven't done so already, and we'll go through them and answer as many as we can. Okay, could you speak to how did you get faculty buy-in?
Hello, this is Niketha. Are you referring to faculty buy-in for the Pre-Search to Research workshop?
Yes.
A lot of it came from the idea that we initially provided feedback forms for our one-shot workshops, and faculty were able to kind of highlight problem areas for their students. And what we did from that is we tried a marketing technique where we designed 2 platforms to see if how faculty felt about it. So we said, okay, well, what if we covered this information in this portion of the workshop to give students more time? Because that's what it kind of all boiled down to. Students just didn't have enough time to really unpack their topic. And it seemed to work, and they really liked the split in the classes, especially professors that are working with freshman populations. They just needed more time to process the information. So when we framed it that way, and as Kim mentioned earlier, by framing it for them so that we giving them a snapshot of the instructional platform, they were able to see what we were actually covering.
Okay, thank you. What do you do specifically to encourage the reflection piece? Are there questions that you use to prompt reflection?
Yeah, so thank you for that question. In the reflection period of the second workshop, we understand that this might be the second day that they have seen us. So day 1 was pre-search, and day 2 is reflection. And so we're literally using the Credo platform, putting it all together to go over their keywords. We did hand out the brainstorming map, and so we're, again, just showing them how to reflect on those keywords, maybe develop even more keywords. And we're having like an open forum, almost an open discussion. The professor is usually in the room, and so we're also reflecting on with the professor where they're going to go from there in their course.
Terrific, thank you. I do have a question too of whether or not you would be willing to share your presentation.
Absolutely.
Okay, so we'll make arrangements to send it out. We'll ask marketing if they can share the presentation with people, and we'll take care of that after it. The next question was, How easy was it for you to develop your Research Bridge program, and who are the stakeholders?
So actually our Research Bridge program was pretty organic because we had high schools reach out to us, and we were able to collaborate with them from that standpoint. And stakeholders, definitely directors, definitely the high schools that we work with, the students, faculty, community. There's some community interest because, of course, at the K-12 level is curriculum changes with Common Core and aligning that or doing the work to align it to the ACRL information literacy standards. So it was good work. It was a lot of work, but it was great work to do. And we have formed some very valuable collaborations as a result of it.
Okay, thank you. For the Google Credo mirror exercise, do you feed the students the search terms to use, or do you direct them to use their own terms?
It depends. I use the communications law example because this was a canned search that we did one time. But sometimes we know that the students have their own topics, and during our 50-minute workshop, we want them to be as hands-on as possible. And so during that type of workshop, they're doing their own search. And luckily, Credo has enough information where no matter what topic they have, music or art, or someone even had pedestrian safety walking across the street. So Credo still held its own with that mirror exercise. This one in the slides is a canned example, but we do both and both canned as well as their own topics.
Okay, terrific. In terms of sharing your slides, I have a note from marketing that if you'll be asked in the follow-up survey if you would like this slide, so please answer yes, and we'll make sure that they come to you. For your next question, you said that a good way of faculty buy-in is to use a step-by-step process or instruction. Can you be more specific about what kind of step-by-step process or instruction will be effective, would be an effective one to do so?
Let's see. I'm trying to recall the step-by-step process. Well, one way that we try to engage faculty is one step that we use is sharing our library plans. That's one of our steps, and we're not sharing the entire plan, but we're sharing enough of it to see if it's aligned with their learning outcomes. I hope that answers the question.
Okay. How do you assess your workshops?
I'm sorry, I did not hear that question.
How do you assess your workshops?
We actually have built-in assessments. So at the end, we have a couple of assessments that we use. We do what we call an awareness bingo, and it's just to give us an idea of how much students are aware, how aware of the resources we have our students, and at the end of it, as Ms. Coleman stated, we do a reflection assessment. So we are just trying to see on a comfortability scale, how comfortable are students leaving the workshop and using these steps again.
Okay, thank you. Are there any additional resources you might recommend?
Yeah, so we are really utilizing here at Howard the LibGuide system. And so we've embedded our library tutorials in our LibGuide. We've created LibGuides not only ad hoc for certain professors, but there's one dedicated LibGuide that we have for freshman, first year experience, as well as a second dedicated LibGuide for information literacy. And so based on those LibGuide resources, we've been able to really kind of make it a dynamic process and a collaborative process as well, because once we share the link to that LibGuide, the professors feel like they can add to what we've already produced. And so it's a really good, it really puts the C in collaborative tool. So that's one of the additional resources that we use.
Okay, terrific. There's been a number of comments in the questions about what an excellent presentation this was. So I would like to thank you all again. Other than people asking to make sure they're going to get your slides, I don't see any additional questions. Just a reminder, there will be a recording of today's presentation shared with you as a follow-up. There is also a short survey shared directly after the webinar and via email. And in that survey, you can request the slides and the presentation. So we will get those to you. The recording usually comes out within 24 hours. The slides, if not within 24 hours, would be very quickly after that. Our next and final webinar in the series is 10 creative activities to support student engagement using Credo. It will take place next Wednesday, August 30th. To learn more about the webinar and to register, please visit the link shown on the slide or use the link in the chat. We look forward to seeing you all at our next meeting and webinar. Thank you so much for joining us, and thank you so much to Niketha and Kimberly and Adia. This was a wonderful and helpful presentation, and the applications are things that people can take with them today and start using right away. So thank you so much for your time and effort.
Thank you.
Right. Have a great day, everyone.